They say time is a straight line. But what if someone could remember the future, the way we remember the past? In 1989, a man was admitted to a psychiatric hospital in upstate New York. He had no identification, no records, no known relatives. But he spoke fluent English. He was lucid, intelligent, and he claimed to be from the year 2092. This isn't just another story about a so-called time traveler. This is about a man whose memories defied all logic, and whose predictions may have already started coming true. He arrived barefoot, wearing clothes 2 sizes too large. He had been found wandering near a rural highway, muttering strings of numbers. The local police couldn't identify him. His fingerprints returned nothing, so they brought him to the Rosewood Psychiatric Institute. At first, they assumed he was delusional, but when doctors tried to question him, he calmly asked, "Is this the 20th century?" He gave no last name, only John. He said he'd been part of a memory recall protocol in a facility called ARC-7. When asked what year he was born, he replied, "Not born." Uploaded staff wrote it off as psychosis, but what disturbed them was how coherent, articulate, and oddly specific he was. He described machines that hadn't been invented yet, events that hadn't happened, but some soon would. After a week in isolation, John began drawing. Not sketches of dreams or abstractions, but blueprints, diagrams, maps of circuits. One sheet labeled Neural Interface version 5.3 matched an early prototype of a brain-computer interface, which wouldn't be published until 1998. Another showed a cityscape. It looked like New York, but flooded. Massive barriers encircled Manhattan. Above it, drones hovered in neat formations. Doctors began keeping a list of John's claims. They expected nonsense, but found patterns. He predicted the 1993 World Trade Center bombing by date. He said a wave of blue fire would follow in 2001. He spoke of a virus with crown-like spikes that would paralyze travel. Each time a prediction came true, his words were revisited. Still, the Institute never went public. Too dangerous, they said. Too unbelievable. During his second month, John was given access to a tape recorder. He used it obsessively, not to speak, but to hum. When analyzed, the humming patterns aligned with digital compression waveforms, technology not used in audio until decades later. He said they were memory stabilizers, that his thoughts weren't linear, and that sound helped him organize. The tapes were stored in the hospital archive. One went missing in 2003. Another was erased from the inside, magnetically. One night, nurses heard screaming. John's door was locked. Inside, he was convulsing on the floor, eyes rolled back, foaming at the mouth. But the camera footage showed something else. For 17 seconds, his body was completely still, frozen, eyes wide open. The screen glitched, and when it resumed, he whispered, "They're coming sooner." The protocol failed. John often spoke of fragments. He said his memories came in pieces, as if someone had tried to delete half of who he was. Sometimes he described cities with no sunlight. Other times, oceans filled with metal islands. Once, he begged for a pen and scribbled a phrase. "Time is not forward. It's a loop that leaks." No one knew what he meant, but one researcher kept those pages. Years later, they'd matched the terminology from a classified DARPA report. In 1991, John handed a sealed envelope to Dr. Halverson, his lead psychiatrist. He said, "Don't open this until July 4th, 2007. She kept it locked in her desk. Out of curiosity, or maybe fear, she waited. And on that date, she opened it. Inside was a single page with 4 words. Bridge. Collapse. Minneapolis. Today. Hours later, the I-35W bridge collapsed in Minneapolis. 13 people died. No one could explain how he knew. After the letter incident, the hospital received a request to transfer John. No signature, no government seal, just a printed memo labeled Reintegration Clearance, Tier 3. Dr. Halverson refused. Days later, she disappeared. No signs of struggle, no leads. Her apartment was found untouched, except for one item missing: the envelope. John never asked where she went. He simply said, "That part of the loop is over." In his sessions, John frequently referenced ARC-7. When asked what it meant, he said, "A reality control node." He described a facility deep underground, surrounded by magnetic shielding, a place where people's minds were separated into layers: core, echo, and ghost. He claimed ARC-7's purpose was to simulate large-scale outcomes by planting memories in multiple subjects from different timelines. One drawing stood out among John's sketches: a massive device shaped like a gyroscope, surrounded by what appeared to be living neural tissue. He called it the carousel. He said it could imprint artificial memories across multiple chronospheres. When a staff member joked about time travel, John corrected him. "It's not travel, it's selective remembering." When asked who built it, he answered, "We did." To forget what we did, John often stared at the sky for hours. He'd whisper numbers under his breath, long sequences that seemed random. An astrophysicist brought in to evaluate him later realized the numbers weren't random. They were coordinates. Each pointed to near-Earth objects, some only discovered decades later. When asked how he knew, John simply said, "Some memories float in from orbit." On October 12, 1992, John vanished from his locked room. No broken windows, no footage. His bed was undisturbed, his personal items untouched. 3 days later, he reappeared, naked in the hospital library, shivering. He couldn't speak for hours. When he finally did, he asked, "Did the moon blink?" No one knew what he meant. But satellite data later showed an unexplained blackout in lunar imagery at the exact time of his disappearance. In 2011, after the Rosewood facility closed, some of John's audio tapes were leaked. One clip featured his voice reciting a phrase in a language no one recognized. Linguists claimed it resembled a proto-AI syntax, a hybrid of English, Mandarin, and machine code. Some believe it was a vocal encryption key. Others say it was gibberish. But one researcher ran it through a military translation model and got a result. Initiate reset. Memory loop incomplete. After the leak, a wave of disappearances occurred. Former staff, researchers, even a nurse who had transcribed John's sessions. The official cause? Undisclosed medical conditions. The reality? Digital traces of their identities were wiped. One internal memo surfaced online, partially redacted. Subject redacted. Remains a Class 4 anomaly. Containment priority reinstated. Chrono integrity breach suspected. In the early 2000s, an anonymous artist began uploading eerie digital paintings. They depicted warped cities, skies with binary clouds, faces melting into static. One gallery featured a piece titled Patient 2092. The style matched John's sketches exactly. No one knew the artist. But the painting stopped in 2017, after the gallery owner was found dead, eyes burned out, but no fire. In 2020, an investigative blogger discovered a strange overlap. A woman named Alice Morrow, institutionalized in the same facility decades earlier, had also written of loops, timeline scars, and echo fragments. She claimed a man would arrive with memories not his own. Her final journal entry read, "Tell John the mirror cracked." But Alice had died in 1975. In 2023, a shortwave radio station in Germany began broadcasting a familiar sequence. The same numeric patterns John once whispered. No origin, no operator, just numbers and humming. A cryptographer noted that the transmission stopped every 209.2 2 seconds, exactly matching the year John claimed to come from. To this day, the signal persists, and no one knows who's listening. Some believe John was a time traveler. Others say he was the subject of an experiment gone wrong, a manufactured consciousness with false memories. One theory suggests he was never a person at all, but a temporal construct sent backward not to warn us, but to seed ideas into our present. Ideas that would one day become memories of the future. In his last documented session, John said, "There's a word we forgot, a word that ends the loop. It's buried beneath everything." The therapist asked what the word was. He smiled, then said, "You'll remember it. In 2092. He closed his eyes and never spoke again. No official record of John exists today. The Rosewood Institute was demolished in 2014. All patient files gone. But his voice lives on, buried in leaked audio and obscure archives. Whispers and frequencies we barely understand. So if you ever find yourself humming a tune you've never heard, or dreaming of places that don't yet exist, ask yourself, are you remembering the past, or something waiting to happen?